A big deal. The Trump administration and lawmakers are closing in on a nearly $2 trillion package to help U.S. workers and the economy, while Republicans accuse Democrats of playing politics. The games won't go on. An update on the 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo, scheduled to begin in 4 months. Staying home. The Vatican makes an announcement about the Pope's first scheduled international trip of 2020. And help from God. The Holy Father tells the faithful the best way to ask for and receive help from God. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, March 24th, 2020. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight, as the nation tries to fight off the coronavirus pandemic, President Donald Trump is looking for ways to get the country moving again. He is worried, like everyone else, about jobs, businesses, and the future of the nation. The question is, when will Americans get the green light? We have team coverage this evening, starting with correspondent Owen Jensen at the White House.
Tracy, here at the White House, the president says Americans out of work isn't healthy either, and he'd like to see them back to work by Easter. As people and businesses sit idle, the president wants the nation to get back to work eventually.
And why would we close down 100% of the country?
But he also knows people's lives are at stake.
I'm not looking at months, I can tell you right now. We're going to be opening up our country. And we're going to be watching certain areas, and we're going to be practicing everything that Deborah's referring to right here. I mean, we're going to be watching this very closely.
There is a clamor to try to reopen the economy.
Speaking outside the West Wing this morning, White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow talked about the money on the way to help suffering Americans.
We still going to need the assistance because in the next week or two or three, you're still going to have a lot of hot zones. You're still going to have shut-ins. There's no miracle here. We're not just, flipping a switch. So the assistance is so vital.
On Wall Street, stocks soared over hopes of government aid. The virus has parked airplanes, shut hotels, and closed restaurants to dine-in customers. Folks just staying home.
I signed a supplemental to my emergency proclamation for a stay-at-home order for everyone in the state of Hawaii.
Meanwhile, Ford announcing it's working with some other giant companies to produce medical equipment and protective gear to help those on the front lines.
The one that's, I think, we're going to make the biggest impact on is a positive air pressure mask. As these healthcare workers wear this shield over the face, the air moves inside of them to keep the virus from actually entering their eyes.
In New York State, they're worried they could see as many as 40,000 people in intensive care in the coming days. India just ordered a massive lockdown of that entire nation, 1.3 billion people, and 400,000 people worldwide are infected by the illness. Most do recover. Tracy?
All right. Thank you, Owen. Correspondent Owen Jensen reporting from the White House tonight. Oh, congressional negotiators signal that they are close to clinching a bipartisan agreement on a nearly $2 trillion emergency stimulus package, capping 5 days of hectic talks that have consumed a mostly empty Capitol. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports.
And Lord, place your healing hands upon John Bessler, Senator Rand Paul, and others who need to feel your touch.
Prayers for those sick with COVID-19, including the husband of Senator Klobuchar, as the urgency of the crisis is felt on the Senate floor.
The American people need our Democratic friends to take yes for an answer.
Last night, I thought we were on the 5-yard line. Right now, we're on the 2.
Democrats concede the end is in sight.
Here are the things that we have been fighting for, we Senate Democrats. First, a Marshall Plan for our medical system.
The Democrats also want 4 months of salary for workers, unemployment for self-employed workers, and billions of dollars in relief to hospitals. Senate Republicans criticized the Democratic plan, linking it to Nancy Pelosi for including corporate board diversity mandates, minimum wage hikes on employers, and canceling the U.S. Postal Service debt. Nevertheless, both sides say they're closing in on an agreement.
I hope, I pray, that we can come together very quickly and pass in large numbers a bipartisan bill that will help the American people who so badly, badly, badly need our help.
As jobless claims skyrocket and financial markets search for stability, welcome signs from Washington that relief is on the horizon. On Capitol Hill, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Joining me now by Skype for more analysis of the coronavirus relief package is Rachel Bovard, Senior Director of Policy at the Conservative Partnership Institute. Rachel, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we just heard from Senator Chuck Schumer saying that he's hopeful that both sides can come together and pass this bill. How optimistic are you that that's going to happen and happen quickly?
I think they're closing in on an agreement either late tonight or early tomorrow. You know, this is really becoming unsustainable, the delays, as working families and individuals and small businesses in particular are closing every day. So they need this relief, and they've been working overnight, I think, to come to some kind of agreement, which I think we'll see either tonight or early tomorrow.
Rachel, what are some of the major sticking points here to move this legislation forward, and where do things stand right now?
Well, with Senate Democrats, you were seeing them really opposed to giving the Treasury Secretary so much deference with what to do for loans for corporations. They wanted more oversight. But then you also had the problem of House Democrats, because remember, this bill has to go to pass the House after it passes the Senate. You saw House Democrats come forward with a plethora of proposals, everything from corporate board diversity to minimum wage to the Green New Deal, and that really threw a wrench in plans because Senate Republicans are not prepared to accept that. They want to get relief directly to families. So those continue to be sticking points tonight.
And in your opinion, do you think this bill goes far enough to help the American people?
I think it's a good start. Again, this is direct relief to families and direct loans to small businesses. They're reducing regulation and getting this money straight to families. Whether or not it's going to be enough, I don't know, but I think a lot of people would agree it needs to happen now.
Yeah. Rachel, quickly, there are a number of lawmakers in self-quarantine because of the coronavirus. Is that going to impact the process here?
It is reducing the number of senators on either side, particularly the Republicans are now missing four senators, and that is going to be a problem for them because they need those extra votes to get this across the finish line, which is why these negotiations are so important, because Democrats are going to have to come across and support this bill in order for it to pass. So negotiations are tenuous, but I hope moving forward.
Oh, Rachel, thanks so much for your insight. Rachel Bovard, Senior Director of Policy at the Conservative Partnership Institute. Thanks again, Rachel.
Thank you.
One other bounce back on the stock market after huge losses yesterday. Markets rallied so much early this morning that trading was halted after the S&P futures soared over 1,000 points. The rebound followed a massive injection of liquidity by the U.S. Federal Reserve. It follows sharp rises in Asian and European markets overnight. The Dow jumped over 1,000 points today on expectations of the deal in Congress to its best day since 1933. Chinese authorities in the city of Wuhan, where the coronavirus outbreak was first detected in late December, are ending the 2-month lockdown.
武汉市解除离汉离鄂通道管控措施。
A TV news anchor in China announcing that the control measures in Wuhan will be lifted in phases. Anyone who is not sick will now be able to travel outside of the Hubei province. The Chinese Communist authorities claim 6,000 neighborhoods in the province are, quote, epidemic-free. The city of Wuhan will remain in lockdown for another 2 weeks. It is now official. The Summer Olympics in Japan are postponed until next year. The head of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics announced today Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe agreed to postpone the Games for a year. Prime Minister Abe was hesitant about moving the Olympics because it would hurt the Japanese economy. However, he was under intense pressure to delay the Games. This is the first time the Olympics have been canceled outside of wartime. Workers in Greece are busy disinfecting the capital of Athens. Greece is in the second day of a lockdown, and police are stopping people to make sure they have permission to be outside. If not, they face a $150 fine. Greece has over 700 cases of COVID-19. Pope Francis has postponed his trip to Malta. The Holy Father was set to visit the Mediterranean island at the end of May, but it was suspended because of the COVID-19 outbreak. It would have been the Holy Father's first international journey of 2020. A new date has not yet been set. Malta is more than 90% Catholic. The Pope's Office of Charities is helping the homeless and refugees in the heart of Rome. Cardinal Konrad Krajewski, the papal almoner, distributed over 50 gallons of milk and food items near Rome's biggest train station today. Yesterday, the cardinal also gave fresh produce to religious sisters who are under strict quarantine after positive coronavirus cases. The cardinal told EWTN that he expects to continue this work every week during the pandemic. Sandra Monteleone, volunteer at the Vincenzen Center, joins us now from Rome. Sandra, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Tracy.
I know that you've been a volunteer for about 8 years. Can you tell us exactly what type of work you do as a volunteer?
Well, I help the homeless to shower. We have a big room in the center of Rome where we give them breakfast, and then we give them clean clothes, and then they can shower, and they can shave, and then whatever they need, and they can stay a few hours with us, and then they have to go. But we can give them food. We can give them, apart from breakfast, a little more food, and it's nice. It's really something I love to do.
That's wonderful. What great work you're doing. And I know the center's been closed because of the coronavirus. What has your experience been, your own personal experience been during the lockdown?
Well, my personal experience is actually the hardest thing is to stay in the present moment. You know, not to think too much about the future or about the past. If only I could do this, if only I could do that. I think you have to work on yourself at this moment that you are alone. And you have to sort of develop the best relationship you can have with yourself.
That's really good advice. I know you're in Rome, you've been there most of your life, but you were born in New York. Do you still have family in the States? And if so, have you been able to speak to them during this pandemic, and how are they doing?
They're doing fine, luckily. I have a brother. He lives in upstate New York right now. He was an architect. He retired. And then my nephew, he's a lawyer for the Southern District of New York. But they're doing fine. They have kids, and they're in the country right now. So they're doing fine, luckily.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. What do you miss most, you know, of being able to go out and not being in lockdown during the quarantine? Is there one thing that you miss the most, and maybe one thing that you would love to do as soon as the quarantine is lifted?
I miss the most, I miss Villa Borghese, which is a lovely park right next door to the house. And I go every day. I used to go every day and walk in nature, and really, I'm so happy when I look at the trees and the little flowers that are starting to bloom, were starting to bloom, and now it's all locked, it's closed, you can't go there. So I miss that mostly.
Sandra, do you have any advice for folks? Obviously, as you probably know, the United States, we're going through the same thing right now as well as everyone all over the world. Any advice for those right now during this difficult time?
Well, last night something interesting happened. I live next door to a church, and I was in my living room and just with a little light on, very dim, and the phone rang, and I answered, and it was Father Gabriel. He was from the church. I know him very well. And he said, "Sandra, are you okay?" I said, "Yes, Father. Why?" And he said, "Because I only saw very dim light. You didn't turn out all the lights as usual." So I turned them on. He said, "Oh, okay, so you're doing well." And this was really a sign for me that we are not alone. If you have faith, or if you really look inside yourself, you can see that we are not alone. We are all part of something much bigger.
That is great advice. Thank you for sharing that with us, Sandra. And thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Sandra Monteleone, volunteer at the Vincenzen Center in Rome. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Well, on a personal note, tonight, our former president and COO of EWTN News, Dan Burke, is currently in the hospital after testing positive for COVID-19. His wife, Stephanie, also tested positive. We ask that you please keep them both in your prayers. Coming up, officials in Texas are seeking to ban most abortions during the coronavirus outbreak. And analysis of what the National Guard is doing to help during the pandemic. National Guard troops are hard at work around the U.S. helping to combat the spread of the coronavirus. Troops in West Virginia have begun delivering medical supplies to 2 hospitals there. Meanwhile, troops in Louisiana are heading up several mobile COVID-19 testing centers in the state. Those centers will serve as models to be followed elsewhere. Joining me now on Skype to talk about the role of the military in fighting COVID-19 here in the U.S. is Dr. Nadja West. She is a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General, as well as the 44th Surgeon General of the U.S. Army and the former Commander General of the U.S. Army Medical Command. Dr. West, welcome to the show, and thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, Tracy. Please call me Nadja.
Well, Nadja, we are seeing troops around the country serving in different capacities. How is this mobilization helping at the state level?
Well, I tell you, the National Guard can really add to the whole of government response with public and private to basically bring everything to bear to help fight this this virus. As our senior leaders in the military are saying, this is a war. It's a war on an invisible enemy, which is the virus. And so the National Guard can bring agility, adaptability, and different capabilities to support wherever the governors of the respective states decide to use them.
I know New York City is in the process of turning the Javits Center into 4 hospitals to increase capacity there. What are the challenges of transforming a place like a convention center into a medical facility, and how can these so-called field hospitals help to relieve the pressure during this health crisis?
Yeah, there's anytime you have something that's outside of your comfort zone as a medical professional, it can be challenging. But I can tell you these federal medical facilities as well. So FEMA has federal medical facilities that they set up in these large areas. Some of the challenges are because you don't have the normal environment, the sterile environment that you need. But in some cases, what you need is just bed capacity to treat individuals. Some that have the virus, of course, some of them need really more detailed and more specific care, respiratory support. But others, just routine care, you can put in some of these individual areas where they transform with cots and other types of logistical support to make them as good as they can for medical treatment.
Nadja, I'm curious, is there a risk of taking away needed doctors and medical staff from maybe their local communities and then activating them for military service?
Well, Tracy, the good news is a lot of these individuals come from those various communities that they're supporting, maybe not directly in that city, but somewhere in the state. And as you're familiar with the different compos of the military, the National Guard, Reserve, and Active, which we call our total force, our senior military leaders are very good about making sure that the missions are not at risk if they do move or activate some of these individuals from different communities. So there's a lot of coordination between the states, the local governments, the national governments, just to make sure that there's not a negative impact. And so there's a cross-leveling ability amongst the different compos, and also, of course, coordination with the state and local governments to ensure that no one's mission is adversely impacted. Because I know our senior leaders have mentioned in the military that it's very important to make sure that we maintain our national security mission, but also making sure that we take care of our people and then take care of our fellow citizens who we are sworn to support and defend.
Yeah. Nadja, I know a lot of folks maybe seeing members of the military in their local communities makes them feel a little bit anxious, especially since a lot of people have been talking about martial law. What can you say to them to maybe calm their fears during this time?
Well, what I could say is, serving in the military for the number of years that I have, that there's no better group of individuals than our military members, our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. And what I've seen in the past is that most individuals feel when they see the military coming, they actually are assured because they usually have been on the ground before with humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, be it tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, wildfires. And so usually when you see the military in your communities, it's a good news story because they're there to help. And again, there's no better group of people to work with than soldiers who have raised their hand during time of war that we've been in for so long, knowing that they could put themselves at risk and harm's way to defend their country overseas. And they really want to do that and make sure that they can keep their communities and their neighbors safe.
Nadja, thank you. Dr. Nadja West, thank you for sharing your expertise.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me. Take care, Tracy. Stay safe.
Thank you, too. Well, officials in Texas are seeking to ban most abortions during the coronavirus outbreak. The state's Republican governor has banned medically unnecessary surgeries and procedures. Both he and the state's attorney general say abortion does not qualify as an essential surgery. Pro-lifers praised the move. Planned Parenthood had no immediate comment. And in Colorado, the Democratic governor signed a measure yesterday to abolish the death penalty. Lawmakers had sent the proposal to his desk late last month. The provision begins July 1st and does not protect those already scheduled to be executed. In 2018, Pope Francis said the death penalty is unacceptable in all circumstances. Up next, remembering St. Oscar Romero on the 40th anniversary of his death. And Pope Francis tells the faithful why apathy is so dangerous.
Ideal de sacerdote ha sido ser siempre fiel a la vocación.
Today is the 40th anniversary of the assassination of St. Oscar Romero in El Salvador. Vatican News released a video to commemorate the occasion. He was appointed Archbishop of San Salvador in 1977. At the time, the country was filled with poverty and dangerous death squads. Several priests were targeted and killed. St. Oscar continued to fight and became known as the voice of those without a voice. He was killed March 24th, 1980, while celebrating Mass. He was 62 years old. In 2018, St. Oscar Romero was canonized by Pope Francis. Continuing our coverage now on the coronavirus pandemic, another concern when it comes to COVID-19 is the impact that it's having on people's psychological well-being. Correspondent Mark Irons joins us now with what those in the Catholic medical professions are advising. Mark?
Tracy, I spoke to doctors today who are recommending a balance of prayer and using your time in a healthy way. It can be achieved even if you are alone and distant from the people you rely on. Calls for social distancing are bringing a greater feeling of isolation, coupled with fear about the spreading virus.
We're seeing fear, we're seeing anxiety, we're seeing just a lot of stress reactions.
While Dr. Benjamin Keys with Divine Mercy University in Virginia is telling people to take proper precautions for physical well-being, he advises everyone to take care of their mental health.
We don't know what's going to happen, but we do have control of how we feel and right where we are. And to learn some of the things that can calm us down, relaxation techniques.
Dr. Barbara Golder with the Catholic Medical Association says information overload can add to anxiety.
Limit your information and limit it to good sources like EWTN or the CDC or other reliable news sources.
Dr. Golder says we often rely on routine for stability. COVID-19 throws out our normal routine, but provides a chance to incorporate more prayer into our lives.
Now we have to make our own schedule. I think that's part of the important process in dealing with what's going on. So when you make out your schedule, you make out your time for devotions, Bible reading, for saying the Divine Mercy Chaplet at 3 o'clock, which most of us are now able to do because we're home.
And Dr. Golder says to have added time presents more opportunities.
Spend time with your family. This is a time when you can read and play board games and share family stories, do family projects, start your garden. Any of those things will give you a sense of success and excessive accomplishment.
Also good for mental health, exercise. And doctors say you can get creative with that, Tracy. Use that workout equipment at home, walk up and down those stairs. And if it is safe to go out in your community, you can go for a run, you can go for a walk outside.
That's great advice, Mark. So when it comes to social distancing, how is that impacting those who maybe go into in-person counseling?
Well, we're seeing some psychologists move to phone calls, video apps to continue their services. And although some people are used to those in-person sessions, I'm told now is not the time to disconnect. There are just so many ways to keep in touch with a counselor. And if you need it, there is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Great information. Correspondent Mark Irons reporting for us. Thanks again, Mark. Pope Francis warns the faithful not to become too pessimistic.
A tanti di noi, tanti cristiani che vivono questo stato di acedia.
At his daily mass at the Vatican, the Holy Father says apathy is like a drug. It can lead to addiction and a life which does not permit our souls to live and grow. Pope Francis also thanked healthcare workers as well as priests and religious sisters for their fight against the coronavirus pandemic. And before we go tonight, a reminder, with public masses canceled, you can always watch our daily masses right here on EWTN. Mass is broadcast each day at 8 a.m., noon, and 7 p.m. Eastern. EWTN is also airing the Pope's daily Mass as well as the Novena from Our Lady of Lourdes. We are also offering Eucharistic adoration from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern on EWTN.com. So be sure to spread the word to your family and friends. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. We're back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.